Hi, my name is Robin Kennedy, and this is my informative speech. At some point in our lives, we all want to have children and start a family. But what if your children can never make eye contact? Or what if they can never say the words, I love you? Would this make you love them any less? Or would you think them any less intelligent than another child? These are the realities of parents with children of autism face daily. 8 months ago, I began a journey I did not know I was actually ready for. Having not worked with any cases of autism in special education, I was nervous and skeptical at the thought that I didn't think I would be fully prepared to take on my own class of autistic kids. I slowly realized that being aware of autism isn't the same thing as really understanding what autism is, because autism has many different faces. It is important to create a better understanding of what autism is, what causes autism, and the signs and symptoms that are related to the spectrum. Statistically speaking, the CDC reported that approximately 1 in 59 children in the United States have been identified with autism. And I think this is interesting because if you're in a crowd of 59 children or 59 people, which is really not a lot of people, then at least one of them has autism. Autism refers to a broad range of conditions characterized by challenges with social skills, repetitive behaviors, speech, and nonverbal communication. Autism is about 4.5 times more likely to occur in boys than girls, which really speaks for itself because my class has 5 boys and no girls. 3 of them will move up to high school next year, and I will get 3 more up in the class coming from elementary school to middle school. So it's interesting to me to hear that statistic because I would now like to find out more about why it is typical in boys, males, than it is females. Autism affects the ability to communicate and interact with others, and is someone who at an early age has trouble talking, creating their own feelings, is sensitive to touch, loud noises, thinking clearly for themselves, and most commonly really is known for being able to live out their own life for the rest of their life. Um, Children with autism will have autism the rest of their life. It just doesn't go away. So, and when they are diagnosed at whatever age, typically it's in the first 3 years of life, then they will have autism and live with that the rest of their life. Some people might think that watching a TV show like the TV series on Netflix, Atypical, which I love because it does give some insight on autism and what children with autism live with daily. Some people might think that it can give insight on what the disorder is, but in reality, this one type of show can't actually represent a whole. There's so much more to it. Understanding autism does not come from watching a movie or reading a book. I think it comes from being around it and really having that one-on-one interaction with somebody with autism to really fully understand it. A study from the Stanford University School of Medicine focused on the pathway of the brain that feels pleasure and reward, which is the ventral tegmental area, and compared it from the brain scans of a normal child without autism with a child with autism. And that's this brain scan. So this is the typical child with no autism, and this is the child with autism. And you can tell that the pathway from the tegmental area through the front to the front of the brain, the frontal lobe, it's a direct pathway, and they are feeling the feeling of emotion and feeling the reward and feeling the sensation of pleasure and how much it gives off. And the child with autism got the same reward and the same hug and the same amount of pleasure, but is showing that they really didn't feel it. So it's interesting to see the two pathways and how they feel the sensation and the reward and what it feels like, and they don't really process it. Which in reality makes sense because I have one boy who does not like to be touched. He doesn't want to be hugged. He doesn't make eye contact. He wants no physical touch within you and him. He just wants you just talk to him and that's it. So I think that's an interesting fact. According to the National Institute of Neurological Disorders and Strokes, studies suggest that ASD could be a result of disruptions in normal brain growth very, very early in development. So it said that autism is more typical in children that are born prematurely. However, concerning my 5 boys, when I talked to their parents at the beginning of the year about it, they weren't diagnosed until later in life, and none of them were premature. And that's just a kind of a statistic within my class. One of them was diagnosed at the age of 3, and like I said, autism is typically diagnosed within the first 3 years of life. He didn't talk at all from the time children should be able to talk. He did not talk. He flapped a lot, and his mom calls it happy feet on his toes. He kind of bounced on his toes a lot up until the age of 3 and had no verbal communication with his mom. That's when he got diagnosed at the age of 3, and he is completely nonverbal. He only communicates through the iPad that was given to him. He is echolalia. He does echolalia, which is he parrots what he hears, so he cannot form sentences. I have taught him probably 50 sight words this year, and it's strictly based off memorization. I bring up a flashcard, it says the word, I sign it to him, and it's pretty much that's based off of memorization for him now. He just now got restroom. He just now got men and ladies, or women, men. So a lot of that for him is strictly based off of memorization. The other boy in my class, he got diagnosed with autism when he was 6, and he did not speak until the age of 7. So he was mute. He did not talk until the age of 7. His mom said he went through extensive therapy. No, he got diagnosed at the age of 4. He went through extensive amount of therapy to try and get him to talk, and he never talked until the age of 7. And what's interesting and ironic about it now is he scripts. So he will script anything he watches. He's like a computer in his brain. He will watch one thing on the TV or the internet and then be able to script the entire thing less than 24 hours later. Some things that he does script is inappropriate, so we work on that. He doesn't really have a filter of what's appropriate and what's not appropriate school behavior, so we are working on that. My other one, you look at him and you would think that he is a typical 8th grader. He is good looking. He looks athletic. He is very well dressed on the outside. He's very polite. He can carry on conversations. But as soon as you get him to do any kind of work, it is the mind of a 3rd grader. And he has a really, really hard time remembering things. He can't remember what 2 plus 2 is. He can't remember what 1 plus 3 is. It's somehow in his brain, he cannot remember school things at all. My other one, he is very intelligent. He is in 7th grade with me right now, but he is on a 5th grade math level, but he's very smart and he's very polite. He does not like to make eye contact at all, and he has a really hard time forming clear sentences. He mumbles a lot. So he's in speech, and we do speech in the classroom. And then my last one, he got diagnosed at a very, very young age, and he actually has a twin brother who is not autistic, and is completely fine and normal. This one, he was diagnosed at a young age. Like I said, he has a twin. He was never really taught routine. So to this day, he doesn't shower. He doesn't like water. He doesn't like the sensation of water. So we have been working on personal hygiene because he has none and creating a routine for that. But it's hard to do in a classroom when the parents won't follow up with that at home. So that's something else I'm trying to work on. So signs of ASD begin during early childhood and typically last throughout a person's life. So they will be like this. All of my 5 boys will be like this and forever. They will more than likely have some kind of person in their life for them. They will have to live with someone. They will never be able to live on their own, which sometimes at night that makes me really sad for them because then they don't get to experience what I got to experience per se growing up. The severity of signs and symptoms varies greatly between individuals. Like I said, be on the spectrum. You can be really high on the spectrum and be fully functioning and be able to go out into society, or you can be really low on the spectrum, like one of my boys who is nonverbal, cannot communicate, will have to have somebody live with him for the rest of his life. But all people with autism have some core symptoms in the areas of communication, social interaction, and repetitive behaviors. They pretty much all like routine. They all are socially awkward. They don't know how to carry on a conversation and keep that conversation going. And if they do, and they're able to be out in society and have that conversation, then it's typically pretty awkward. And a lot of the times they don't have a filter. And so if they come up and you're wearing like what you think is a really pretty pink shirt, or you think, man, my hair looks really good today, then more than likely they'll say, that pink shirt doesn't look really good. Or your hair looks really different today. What did you do? So they don't really have filters like that. Autism consists on a continuum from mild to severe. We know that there is not one autism, but many types of autism. They have now grouped it on a spectrum instead of pulling it out individually like a subtype of autism. It is now on a broad spectrum. Because autism is a spectrum disorder, each person with autism has a distinct set of strengths and weaknesses. Like I said, some of my boys are really smart and some of my boys are really low on the spectrum, but in turn, they are all very sweet and they all treat everybody with kindness and love, and they know at the end of the day, if they do have an outburst, that it was wrong. They know at the end of the day that I care for them, and what we're doing is we're trying to help them and try to better them so they can be out in society. So it's important to create a better understanding of what autism is, that we talked about that, and what causes autism and the signs and symptoms. That way, when you are out in the real world and you might come across with somebody that might seem a little bit different, maybe just stop and think, well, could they be on the spectrum, or what can I do to have a conversation to make it less awkward for them? The ways in which people with autism learn, think, and problem solve can range from highly skilled to severely challenged. I have a boy, like I said, who's extremely intelligent, will make the eye contact, will give you the hugs, all the way to a boy that is nonverbal and can't even form his own sentences. Learning, responding, and thinking differences result in confusion, frustration, and anxiety expressed in withdrawal, repetitive behaviors, and sometimes in aggression or self-injury. Luckily, I got really lucky this year, and I don't have any boys that self-harm or try and harm me or the other teacher in my class. Next year, I will have one, so I'm going to have to take some training on that and how to better be equipped to deal with that kind of behavior because I have never worked with someone with that behavior before. So I hope today that you have learned a little bit of insight on what autism is, what causes autism, and the signs and symptoms to better help you understand what the autism spectrum disorder is.